Why do some men, even after conquering the world, die alone? Why does love, which should embrace greatness, so often abandon it? And deep down, do most women truly want an exceptional man, or just someone who doesn't love his mission more than he loves her?
A woman is merely a machine for producing children. This quote by Napoleon Bonaparte is not an empty provocation. It's the cruel reflection of a disillusionment he experienced firsthand, not as an emperor, but as a man. Imagine having the power to bend empires, yet being bent by the absence of affection. Imagine winning battles against nations, but losing silent wars in the heart of the one you love. That's what Napoleon lived. While he wrote passionate, almost desperate letters to Josephine, she was laughing in someone else's arms. And there, between victories and betrayals, a brutal truth began to emerge. Not all women want the weight of greatness. Many long for the predictable comfort of the mediocre. Maybe you, as a man, have felt this, that strange abandonment at the peak of your dedication, your effort, your mission. Maybe you believed that being admirable was enough, that being loyal, driven, disciplined would make you lovable. But Napoleon understood something few dare to face. Greatness demands sacrifices, and among them is ordinary love. This video is a call for lucidity, an uncomfortable dive into a truth that isn't taught in fairy tales nor shouted from self-help stages. Here, we won't ask for permission to be sensitive. We're going to ask the questions that hurt, because only pain makes room for understanding. Get ready, because today's journey begins where most give up, in the emotional exile of the man who refuses to live small. There comes a moment in every visionary man's life when he realizes the path to greatness is too narrow for two. It's not about arrogance, nor is it a childish refusal of love. It's something quieter and infinitely more brutal, the incompatibility between a mission and predictable affection. You see, a man who wants to live an ordinary life can have a routine, a constant presence, a love that's always available. But the man who seeks to transcend, who wants to leave a legacy, doesn't belong to the now. He lives for the future. He is a foreigner to the present, and that makes him a strange body in the emotional field of conventional relationship. Have you noticed that the more disciplined, focused, and visionary a man becomes, the more difficult he seems, distant, complicated? It's because that man, contrary to what people think, isn't absent. He's present in another dimension, a dimension few can access. He is present in silence, in strategy, in sacrifice. He is present in the hours when the world sleeps and he works. He is present when he gives up pleasure to become the architect of something no one else can see yet. But the world doesn't understand this. And more than the world, the person beside him often doesn't understand either. Napoleon lived this tension. While the world applauded him as emperor, Josephine saw him as a distant lover. He wrote her fiery letters, begging for love, while she entertained others in Paris. Not because she was cruel, but because she couldn't see the man burning right in front of her. And this still happens today, every day, in silence. Greatness consumes, and what is consumed cannot give itself in the same way. A man on a mission isn't gentle all the time. He is hard, not because he wants to hurt, but because the steel that shapes him doesn't allow for constant softness. He has no time for emotional reassurances, for games, for the insecure dance of affection that so many relationships demand. That's why he walks alone, not because he wants to, but because he has to, because the fire of greatness burns everything fragile around it, including relationships built on emotional dependency. Nietzsche said that the individual must bear the burden of their own existence. And when that individual is a man who dares to challenge time with his ambitions, the burden becomes solitude, a solitude that isn't lack, but consequence. Modern society loves the idea of a great man until he actually shows up, because he doesn't bend, doesn't yield, doesn't fit in. He isn't pliable. He doesn't wait to be understood. He is a force, and forces aren't embraced. They're feared. How many men do you know who were left at the peak of building something? How many were judged for being coldly focused, for not showing enough love? The truth is, ordinary love demands constant emotional presence, but building something eternal demands absence, sacrifice, obsession. Most people aren't ready for that. The exceptional man pays this price. He sees others being loved for doing less. He sees average men being chosen because they are safe, and he understands, not with anger, but with clarity. He wasn't rejected for his flaws. He was rejected for his intensity, because his greatness doesn't comfort, it confronts. and few have the stomach to face the reflection of everything they are not. So he moves on alone, not because he desires solitude, but because it's the only place where his essence doesn't need to be watered down to fit the shallow. And that is the most brutal truth a great man must accept. The path is lonely, not for lack of love, but because few have the courage to walk beside the fire. Napoleon Bonaparte, the man who redrew the map of Europe, who commanded armies with a mere gesture, was not defeated on the battlefield, but in the invisible territory of the heart. His story with Josephine is more than a failed romance. It's a painful mirror of what happens when the greatness of a man collides with the silent yearning for an ordinary life. Josephine was not just any woman. She was a refined courtesan, astute, charming, someone who understood social games with the same mastery that Napoleon understood the art of war. In the beginning, she captivated him, not with grandeur, but with presence, with the ability to offer what the world rarely gave him, immediate human warmth. And Napoleon, that titan of history, surrendered. In the letters he sent her, his passion overflowed without filters, as in one revealing passage. "Since I left you, I have cried a lot. Every moment I ask myself, what is she doing? Could she be thinking of me?" These are not the words of an emperor. They are the words of a wounded man, of a heart that, for a moment, dared to believe it could be loved without conditions. But Josephine, she wasn't prepared for the weight of loving a man at war with himself and with the world. She longed for presence. He was absence. She wanted stability. He carried storms. While Napoleon marched across Europe, building his empire at the tip of a sword, Josephine sought comfort in other arms, not out of pure malice, but from an inability to endure the emotional absence of someone born to live on battlefields, not in the garden of predictability. Napoleon fought two wars at once, one against the kingdoms that dared to oppose him, and another, secret and silent, to keep alive a love that had already died without him noticing. And the most painful of all was the second. How many men have tried the impossible just to be enough for someone who, deep down, wanted something else? How many bent their spirit, lowered their heads, tried to fit into the mold of conventional love, only to realize they had lost themselves in the process? Napoleon was called arrogant, insensitive, even megalomaniacal, but anyone who reads his letters without prejudice sees another man beneath the surface, a man who, at his core, longed for something his greatness would never allow, the simplicity of ordinary love. He wasn't an ordinary man. Therefore, the love he needed couldn't be ordinary either. Josephine wanted a man who was present for her. Napoleon was a man who was present for history. And that difference, seemingly small at first glance, is an abyss that cannot be crossed. Nietzsche, once again, sheds light on this truth when he said, "He who does not want to belong to the herd must be willing to walk alone." By embracing his monumental destiny, Napoleon also sealed his intimate solitude. What kills love isn't the absence of sweet words or romantic dinners. What kills it is a mismatch in rhythms. While one longs to live in the now, the other gets lost in the future. While one seeks stability, the other craves eternity. In the end, Napoleon understood, no matter how deeply you love, if your mission demands that you fly, those who can only walk will eventually be left behind. And for those who fly, looking back is the most painful kind of weakness. And so, the emperor who moved armies with sheer willpower found himself alone, defeated not by a rival, but by the human need to be loved completely, a need his destiny would never allow him to fulfill. And perhaps that is the bitterest lesson of all. Human love is made for men who fit in. History is for those who dare not to fit anywhere. There's an uncomfortable truth that hangs over most modern relationships, but few have the courage to name it. When confronted with true greatness, most people don't lean in. They pull away. They prefer the comfort of the predictable to the discomfort of walking alongside the extraordinary. It's easy in theory to admire men like Napoleon, Tesla, Churchill, or Jobs, but to live with them, to love someone like that, it requires a kind of emotional strength that very, very few people truly possess. Because to love a man on a mission is essentially to give up being the center. It's understanding that you won't be the axis of his life, because he already has one. And it isn't you. Most women don't consciously reject a great man. They admire him, talk about him, feel drawn to him at first. But over time, they realize he doesn't bend. He isn't easily shaped. His mind isn't always available for everyday conversations, fleeting dramas. He's a present absence, a body here, a soul somewhere else. And that's not neglect, it's purpose. So, without realizing it, they turn toward the man who listens to everything, who replies quickly, who changes his mind for her, who gives up his own dreams to keep the household in harmony. That man is predictable, and predictable feels safe. Predictable doesn't threaten. It doesn't demand growth. It doesn't force us to confront our own limitations. He doesn't disappear for hours in silence. He doesn't lose sleep over an idea no one else understands. He's there, constant, adaptable, emotionally available. He's shapeable and therefore comfortable. But here's the bitter irony. What's comfortable is rarely inspiring. What's too accessible isn't admired. And so, the woman who chose the predictable man eventually looks at him and sees something hard to accept. She loves him, yes, but she doesn't respect him. Because deep down, she knows this man revolved around her. Instead of pulling her into orbit around something greater, the female psyche, just like the male one, is paradoxical. It longs for safety, but also craves to be challenged. It wants comfort, yet also desires to be elevated. And when it doesn't find both in the same man, it chooses the one that hurts less. And what hurts less is mediocrity. Many men try to make sense of this phenomenon by blaming themselves. What did I do wrong? But that's not the right question. The real question is, did she want a man like me? Or just someone who seemed like me, without truly being? Napoleon learned this the hard way. He wasn't rejected for lack of love. He was rejected because loving a man like him meant getting lost in a world where love wasn't the priority. Glory was. And the most tragic part? Even after choosing the predictable, many women still idealize the extraordinary. They follow the profiles of untouchable men, read books about leaders, share quotes from geniuses. But in practice, they go to bed with the safe choice. It's not hypocrisy. It's fear. Fear of fading beside someone who shines too brightly. Fear of being forgotten by a man who belongs to time itself, not just the bedroom. Fear of realizing that walking beside a giant means having to grow, and growth hurts. That's why the choice for predictability is rarely spoken out loud. It hides behind emotional arguments, moral justifications, and phrases like, "He understands me," or "He makes me laugh." But the raw, unfiltered truth is, the predictable never challenges, and the extraordinary always unsettles. So if you're a man who carries within you an unquenchable flame, a mission, a vision, a greater purpose, understand this. Your rejection isn't personal, it's structural. You don't fit into the narrative of comfort, and anything that doesn't fit is frightening. That's why many prefer the predictable, not out of cowardice, but because the cost of keeping up with a man on the rise is simply too high, and not everyone is willing to pay it. Every journey that seeks to transcend the ordinary eventually runs into an unavoidable choice. Do you want to be loved or remembered? Do you want to warm a heart or set the world on fire? This isn't a rhetorical question. It's the silent dilemma that pounds in the chest of every man who carries within himself the spark of greatness. And as painful as it may be to admit, the answer is never both. Napoleon learned this the hard way. He loved intensely, even desperately, but he also knew, perhaps from the very beginning, that his love for history, for conquest, for the eternal was greater. He tried to balance both, tried to be the emperor of nations and a slave to affection at the same time. But life doesn't allow that. Life demands a choice, and here lies the true brutality. Comfort seeks the now, legacy demands the later, and the later charges the now as its price. The man who chooses comfort falls asleep with kisses and wakes up with embraces. The man who chooses legacy falls asleep with strategies and wakes up to battles. Comfort requires emotional presence, constant giving, infinite adaptability. Legacy requires strategic solitude, ongoing sacrifice, quiet resilience. And this is where many lose their way. Many try to create a third path, a road where they can preserve peaceful love and still pursue relentless greatness. But that road is a mirage, because the man who tries to be everything to everyone loses what made him extraordinary in the first place, the refusal to be tamed. The great secret few dare to speak is that women and men say they want greatness, but what they really want most of the time is domesticated greatness, a strong man, but gentle, ambitious, but primarily romantic. unstoppable, but willing to stop whenever he's called? This mythical creature does not exist, not because a man is incapable of love, but because someone who is truly at war with time doesn't get breaks. Someone who wants to carve his name into the bones of eternity cannot be stopped by fleeting emotions, not even the purest ones. Nietzsche once said, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster. And if you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you." That is the nature of greatness. You either lose yourself in the mission, or you accomplish nothing at all. So the dilemma becomes clear. Comfort or legacy? Comfort will give you hugs, dinners, presents. Legacy will give you memories that outlast centuries, statues raised by hands that will never know your face, but will honor your name. And this is where the true man reveals himself, because the path of comfort is easy. The path of legacy is lonely, harsh, and unforgiving. Few have the courage to live for something greater than themselves. Few are willing to be misunderstood, hated, abandoned, in exchange for a single line in the history book. Few choose to walk toward eternity, knowing that along the way, they'll have to let go of the hands that love them today. But those few are the ones who change the world. Napoleon made his choice, and in choosing, he paid. He paid with love, with friendship, with understanding. But he also engraved his name into the fabric of humanity in a way that millions who chose comfort never could. So, if today you feel that your journey is lonely, if you feel the sting of being misunderstood, of being left behind by those you most wanted by your side, remember, that's part of the price. And great men don't pay small prices. You can build a nest or an empire. You can live embraced or be eternal, but never both. Choose wisely. And if you choose legacy, never again mourn the loss of comfort, because your true home will be history. In the end, the life of a great man is not a story of easy victories or everlasting love. It's a story of constant battle, not only against the world, but against human nature itself, which longs for comfort, understanding, and acceptance. Napoleon, the man who redrew empires, died exiled on a forgotten island. But look, even in isolation, even abandoned, his name echoes through the centuries, while so many others who lived and died in comfort, safety, and love vanished like dust without a story. Greatness comes at a price, and it's a heavy one. And you, who may have felt the weight of these choices, who have been left behind, misunderstood, called cold, distant, hard to love, need to understand this. There is nothing wrong with you. You simply weren't born for a small life, and that is frightening, because your mission was never to be understood. Your mission is to leave a trail of fire wherever you go, even if no one understands the burns it takes to do so. So when doubt creeps in, when loneliness shows up, remember, you may not be loved now, but you will be remembered forever. And in the end, that is the most honest and brutal choice a man can make, to be eternal or to be comfortable. When I was young, I remember one night, lying on the floor of a small rented apartment, staring at the ceiling and asking myself, is all of this really worth it? I had just lost someone I loved deeply because she said I was always distant, always with my head somewhere else. And she was right. My head was somewhere else. In dreams she couldn't see. In battles she would never hear echo. In visions I knew had to exist, even if they cost me everything. That night, I learned something I never forgot. The road to greatness is paved with silent goodbyes. And that's why, if you've made it this far, if this video has touched some forgotten or aching part of your spirit, know this: you are not alone. You are part of an invisible lineage of men who chose eternity over comfort, who chose fire over a blanket. Now I want to offer you something that isn't for everyone, but it is for you, who came here looking for deeper answers about who you are and where your life is going. I didn't just write a book, I built a map for the soul, a manual that blends science, philosophy, and critical thinking to help you break mental patterns, question your identity, and rebuild yourself from the ground up. This isn't a cute ebook full of motivational quotes. It's a guide for those who can no longer bear to live on autopilot. If something inside you is calling for change, for growth, for clarity, then this is your moment. Click the pinned comment and access the manual of self-transformation now. Don't read it out of curiosity. Read it because your life depends on it. And if you decide to begin this journey, you won't be the same at the end of the road. So don't leave this space in silence. Break through this cold internet wall. Like, comment, share this video. And for the few who feel this message is a personal calling, Become a member of the channel, not because it looks good, but because, like truth, greatness needs those who will carry it. Now, 2 videos are popping up on the screen. I won't tell you what they are, but I can promise you one thing. They'll awaken something in you that you thought was already asleep. See you on the other side, or at the top.